Good morning and welcome to the Buzz with Busy Crochet. Thanks so much for joining us live today. I want to take the opportunity to introduce you to Debbie from MadameStitch. She is going to join us in just a moment here. I'm super excited for you to meet her. Give me just a second and we'll bring her right in. Good morning, Debbie, and welcome to the Buzz with Busy Crochet. Thanks so much for interviewing with me today.
You are most welcome. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So we talked a little bit before we started our video, and you were telling me about the area that you're from. Did you want to tell our listeners today, where you're from, any family information that you'd like to share with us? Are you married? How long have you been married? Kids, that kind of stuff.
Well, I've been married for a gajillion years. I think it's 47 this year.
That's awesome.
Of course, that was my high school sweetheart. So we've been together since life began. We have
really
three
cool.
adult children. Yeah, yeah, we know each other really well, sometimes too well, but that's all right.
Yeah.
We have three adult children, and they all live close by, either in Philadelphia or in the area. And a daughter-in-law, and I have two grandsons. One is about to turn 13, so he's super excited to almost be a teenager.
That's so cool.
Yeah, they're fun. I spend 2 afternoons a week with them because I help pick them up from school and get them to swim practice and baseball and all of that stuff. So we spend a lot of time together. I live in the Lehigh Valley, which is due north of Philadelphia, about an hour's drive as the crow flies, and due west of New York City. So we have the best of all possible worlds. We go into the cities on a regular basis and do shows and museums and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, we're more familiar with Philadelphia because we used to live in Wilmington, Delaware. So on the south side of it, so we've spent a lot of time in Philadelphia. Plus, one of my sons lives in Philadelphia, right near Independence Center. So
neat.
It's very, very easy to get around. I have a dog who's just amazing. Of course, everybody's dog is amazing, but she's
Absolutely.
18 pounds of pure energy. She's an miniature Aussie poo, and just a bunch of fun to walk and play with and all of that stuff. So my husband and I should be retired by now, but neither one of us are because we just can't get enough work. But I don't know if this would be of interest to anybody, but this is actually my second career. I used to be
Tell us about the first one.
A classical singer. So I would perform solo with orchestra or recital or something like that. And I also taught private voice lessons at the local universities here and at home. So I retired from that in 2020. And I had been doing MadameStitch. I know I'm getting kind of ahead of us in the questions, but I had started MadameStitch before I retired, thinking that I might like to make a business out of it so that I wasn't really retired, that I was just switching careers. So in 2020, I went full-time MadameStitch. So
was the MadameStitch decision, was that something that was brought on by the pandemic, or was it something you were going to do anyway?
No, I actually started it in 2014, and I really didn't know anything about business at all. I thought it was just write a pattern and they will come. And so seriously, my best friend would ask me, well, is it profitable? And I would hem and haw, because really I wasn't doing anything except writing patterns. And that really isn't the best way to make money, because you have to diversify. Right. So, but in 2020, when I retired in May, I went full tilt into MadameStitch and studied how to do business and diversified. And now I can say it's a legitimate business, whereas it was just kind of playtime before.
Yes, absolutely. So I know that you and I are in the same coaching business group. And
Mhm.
was that about the time that you started working with Pam Grace?
Yeah, it was in September that I don't know how I even saw the CBA announcements. I don't know if I got an email or saw it on Facebook, but it clicked that I needed
Mhm,
business help.
mhm.
And as soon as I signed on to that, things took off because I learned all the stuff.
Yes.
Um, and now I'm a member of the mastermind group, and it's
Mhm,
just made an incredible difference in my business. I'm very busy, but
mhm,
it's a good busy. It's constantly learning new things to try in the business.
mhm,
Um, I've diversified from just writing patterns. As you know, I'm a tech editor,
mhm.
which is something I actually decided to do before I joined PAM CBA.
Okay.
I have a lot of other things, hands in the pot. I'm developing a
Mhm.
course or two. So,
Nice.
um, yeah, and learning how to just even deal with the website
Yes.
was a revelation.
It is. I know that I personally have learned so much. I'm only a year or 2 into it with her, and the mastermind is actually on my bucket list of things to achieve. So,
Yeah.
but I've gained so much from her. Was thinking about the kind of tagline that she not came up with necessarily, but she started putting out, I wanna say about a year ago, the community over competition. And I've noticed that
Mhm.
that is not an attitude, but um, an idea that has been kind of spreading around within the community
Mhm.
itself. And what are your thoughts on that? What is your take on that?
Well, I'll disagree with you. I think it is an attitude. I think it's an attitude that you as a business owner need to adopt, that people aren't out to get you. You need to
Yeah.
work with the other people in the business because, we sort of think of crochet as this one-dimensional thing.
Mhm.
Um, my design my design um, attitude is a little bit different from yours. My What I like to
Mhm.
design is different from you. Even if I we design the exact same things, our style is different, and the people who
Absolutely.
like our style are different. And I think there's where the variety is, that we all have a different take on what that crochet should look like.
Mhm.
Um, and it fits different people, or several crochet designers might fit one person because they fill those different needs of the
Mhm.
crochet maker, right? So I do think it's an attitude, because if you have an attitude of everyone's out to compete against you, um, it's not a healthy mindset to be in, that you
I
can
agree with
learn
you.
from other people. And I regularly visit other people's Instagram feeds, their websites, their patterns even,
Mhm.
to see what they're offering, because it informs what I do.
I agree with you completely there. One of the things that I personally, when I started really getting more patterns out there, when I was really designing more, um, one thing I didn't want to be was white noise. I don't want to just be recreating everything
Right,
that everybody else is doing.
right.
Do you feel like that is something that you've also adopted?
It is, and it's funny you should mention that, because I've tried to in the past be all the things to all the people. Yeah, and design all different kinds of things. And the
Yes.
last year, I've been thinking about what my particular niche is. Now, I've
Mhm,
always adopted the attitude that my avatar is really someone like me, not maybe necessarily someone my age, but
mhm,
someone. I've always been a professional
mhm,
who wanted to crochet, and I wanted to have beautiful things to wear, to give
mhm.
away, but I just don't have the the time
Yeah.
or the brain space to take on complicated stuff.
Mhm,
So I want to make sure that the patterns that I write, the designs I come up with, are beautiful, interesting, but they're
mhm,
geared toward the busy crafter, somebody who
mhm.
I'm going to set that down and come back to it in a few hours or a few days or a few weeks, and not go, what the heck
Was
was
I
I
doing?
doing? And what row was I on? And I mean, here's a perfect story of why this is my perfect avatar. I also knit. I haven't been knitting because I don't really have time. But back in the day when I was knitting on a regular basis, I found this gorgeous pattern for a sweater that had this gorgeous cable pattern down the front. And I
Oh,
printed out the pattern and I marked it up, but I had to put it aside for whatever reason.
mm,
I came back to it and could not find the printed pattern and it was a multi-repeat pattern in the front panel. There's no way I could tell where I was, and
mm.
so that project is now forever dead.
Oh,
So
yes.
and it's a shame because it's gorgeous, but that's the kind of person that I speak to who's like me, who's I'm still busy even though this is my profession. I'm
Right.
not crocheting stuff for fun most of the time,
Yeah,
although it is fun. I want that caveat in there. It's
yeah.
all fun, but um that's my person. But now
Mm.
my niche is what I love granny squares. It's my spirit animal. Um, it's my spirit crochet. And I am exploring everything granny square because I think it gets a little bit of a bad rap.
It does.
Because
Yeah.
it's plain, it's old. Um, but I just this weekend, I don't know if you can see this or not,
I
but
think the
it's
name
kind of
itself
hard to
kind of
see.
makes people think granny.
Exactly. Well, I'm a granny, so, it makes sense that a granny anyway, but I started working on this. I don't know if you can
Oh,
see
that's
it.
so cute. Yes, I can see that.
Granny stitch lace. So
Oh,
I'm
nice.
trying to develop different ways, different stitches that incorporate the granny stitch in it, different stitch patterns,
Mhm.
um, different ways to do a granny square. So it's still, I'm a traditionalist at heart. It
Mm,
has to be a traditional granny square,
sure.
but ways that I can incorporate other things in, like baubles and popcorns and texture
Yeah,
stitches
yeah.
that make it slightly different. Or what does the yarn do for it? Or what
Oh,
does the
yeah,
color scheme do for it?
yeah.
So I'm niching down to
That's
granny
nice.
this,
So, I
granny
mean,
that.
I think that that's a great thing to do because it is such a fundamental stitch. It really is. I
Mhm,
mean, like, I think almost all of us there are some of us who haven't, obviously, but almost all of us have started with a granny square. As a matter of fact, when I started back up with crochet, because I've been crocheting since I was 8, but I set it down for so many years, and then I wanted to do it again. I could not remember how to do a granny square for the life of me. And my husband's grandmother happened to be visiting us up north. We were living in Wisconsin at the time. And she taught me over the weekend how to do a granny square. And that was it. I just exploded after that. I was
mhm.
absolutely in love. And it's such a fundamental statement crochet stitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
right.
I love the fact that you're updating it though and bringing it, and making it more modern.
Yeah, I'm not the only one. There are, several
Hmm.
really great designers out there who are elevating the granny square and
Yeah.
making everybody just go gaga over it. For me, along with that busy crafter person,
Hmm.
crochet for me is my mindfulness. It's my
Hmm.
kick back and relax.
Yeah.
It's I can do it in my sleep sort of thing. And a granny square, I don't know what it is, but I can take it with me anywhere I go. I don't
Hmm.
have to think about it. But I love how it grows, and then I'm finished and I can put it aside. Yeah, I
Hmm.
have to sew it all together,
Yeah.
but it's just a wonderful mindful exercise.
Absolutely.
So it helps calm me down. It's got all of these benefits, and I just think it's a highly misunderstood art that I am
Mhm.
going to try to elevate to a place where people just want to do granny squares all the time.
Yes, I mean, that's amazing. I think that's great. So we've been talking about crochet for, a few minutes here. When did you get started with crochet? Is this something that you've done your whole life?
Sort of. I don't remember all the details, but when I was in high school, my grandmother taught me how to crochet. And honestly, I don't have memories of her sitting
Mm,
in a chair crocheting, but obviously
mhm.
she knew how.
Yeah.
Um, but she taught me how to crochet, and the very first project that I completed, which I still have, is a granny square scarf
Oh, that's
out of
awesome.
that horrid, awful acrylic yarn that they had back in the day that was just scratchy and gross and bled every time you tried to wash it. So I'm not
Oh
sure
my
the scarf
gosh.
has ever been washed, which is gross, um, but that I think that might be part of the reason why I love granny squares so much is because,
Mhm.
my grandmother taught me when I was a teenager. I became obsessed immediately,
Yeah.
so much so that I would take it to school with me, and I don't know how I wasn't laughed out of class, but I would always finish my work early,
Uh-huh.
and I would have that skein of yarn and my hook, and I would crochet in the few minutes I had left in class.
That's how I kind of am about crochet even now, is I have to have it with me everywhere because
Mhm.
I feel like if I'm sitting I always say if I'm sitting, I'm knitting. I mean, I do knit as well, but it's just a statement. Um, I feel like if I'm not doing something with my hands, I'm not being productive. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and I don't feel like crochet is like it's not like cleaning the house or
Mhm,
writing or something like that. It's relaxing, but yeah,
mhm.
I can't watch TV without it.
And
I
totally
feel like I'm
fulfilling as
wasting
well.
time.
I mean,
Yeah,
yes, you can clean your
absolutely.
house, but that gets messed up right away. If you crochet something, it's with you. You know, you get to keep
Yeah.
it, and when you're done, you're done.
Well, you get to keep it, but mostly I give mine away, so I'm not
Me too, I'm terrible about it.
I know.
There was one thing that I have actually made for myself, and I kept it, and those are my Christmas blankets, and they get packed away every Christmas, but they come out, and then I just don't keep stuff for myself. I don't know why.
I think it's because crochet is such a beautiful art to get there's something about getting a handmade piece that's
Yeah.
so special. I'll give you an example. I mean, my kids have gotten crocheted stuff their entire
Mhm,
lives, but now that they're adults and have their own homes, I've been trying to find ways to help them make their homes more comfortable. My
mhm,
oldest son long ago had mentioned that I it was time for him to get a new blanket, and I just kept putting it off. For Christmas, I did just a very simple granny stitch and solid section ripple blanket
mhm.
out of a beautiful black,
Oh, I
oh
bet you that was
my
pretty.
god, black tweed yarn and gave it to him. I think he almost cried when he opened it. And then he
Oh.
kept sending me texts saying how much he loved it, and that's why
Mm,
I love to give away my crochet
mhm,
because it's better than writing something down for me, writing a
mhm.
note to someone. "Here's something I spent hours making for you. I don't expect anything," and the joy that they get out of it is why I give it all away.
Yes.
I'm doing better about keeping some things for me, but
Yeah. I agree with
mostly
you
I give it away.
completely. The gift giving is probably the best part of it.
Mhm.
And, you know, you had said that your son I've only ever had one gift that wasn't appreciated, and I, you know, of course, never really gave to that person again, but I have found that most people that I give items to, they really appreciate it, but I also try to include a note saying, "Hey, you know, I thought of you specifically as I was making this." That seems to touch them as much as the actual item
Mhm.
itself. People
Yeah,
like to be thought of.
they do, and they understand that crochet takes time,
Mhm,
that you had to it's not about the money you spent, it's about the time that you spent.
mhm.
What they don't understand and what we're not going to share with them is that we got more enjoyment out of making it and giving it than they did receiving it, exactly.
Yes, yeah. Like, this is my personal
We're not gonna
therapy.
share that.
You're welcome. Oh my gosh, yes. I've seen some of the silly little memes like, "I crochet so I don't murder people," or "I crochet so I don't hit people," and, I mean, I'm not quite that violent, but I get it, you know? I get the sentiment behind it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. We've got a couple of people that have been actually commenting as we're going. Sonia says that if she's not crocheting while she watches TV, she falls asleep.
Uh, that's good.
And Yoki said, it gives you satisfaction when you see a smile on someone's face when
Mhm.
you give something away. I absolutely agree with that. Um,
Yep.
so you said that you are a multi-crafter and you said that you knit as well as crochet. Are there any other things that you're into?
Why I for a long time, I did counted cross stitch, especially early in my marriage. Um, when my, mother-in-law passed away, I got back a few of the items that I had cross stitched for her, some pictures that I had done for her home. I used to do them all the time because that was my mother's main craft. She did these incredibly intricate counted cross stitch pictures. I didn't get quite that intricate with the stitching overlay and all of that stuff, but I did do that for a long time. And I don't do it so much anymore because, I don't see age as an impediment.
Mhm.
But when your eyes are not so good because you're older, age is an impediment. So I don't do that. I don't do that anymore. We're not going to talk about how old I am because I don't feel like a number is important, but
You
um,
know.
counted cross stitch. When my kids were in school, I would do all kinds of things for teachers'
Mhm.
gifts and, paint pots and give them a plant or
Oh,
um,
fun.
write and do ornaments that had little counted cross stitch inserts or they got the best gifts when my kids were in elementary school, and none of it was ever crochet, it was always something else, but mostly
Mhm.
now I crochet because I don't know, I just feel like that's what gets me through the day, and the other stuff is a
Mhm.
little bit of noise, so I don't do that anymore.
It's kind of funny how and I get what you're saying as far as, like, your kids' teachers got the best gifts because it feels like when we're younger, we are because I'm 51. So, it feels like when I was in my 20s, I was searching for that thing that meant something to me, for that thing that I
Mhm,
loved to do, and I touched everything. I painted, I did jewelry, I did kind of cross stitch. I learned how to knit eventually. Just all these things. And I'm the same as you. It's like I have personally niched down my life to the thing that brings me the
mhm.
greatest joy.
Yep,
So,
yep, and
and
I
so
I
you
think
obviously
because me and
use I'm so sorry.
No, 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 go ahead.
Just you obviously use crochet as like your distressor, your way to calm down
Mhm.
and flow.
Yeah, it's not just my business. Um,
Yeah.
it is absolutely the thing that keeps me from going absolutely bonkers. Mhm.
I completely
Oh,
understand that.
I may actually be bonkers. Some people would say I am. So maybe haven't been completely successful, but
I call it my flavor, I know I'm a lot and not everybody loves me and that's okay.
yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to actually ask you about your patterns because I was going through your website today and you have a very nice website, by the way. But I noticed that you break all of and I love the way that you break down all of your patterns into kind of like a subject. And my favorite of those is the Highland pillow because I'm super like I love texture. I love
Mm,
texture and I love colors. So my two favorite that popped out at me was the Highland pillow and the Scarlet Snowberry Infinity Scarf. So do you have
oh
a
my
favorite
gosh.
of all of your patterns?
I don't. I mean, I wish I could say I did. But I think my favorites are like you. It's the ones where some element of it just pops out at you. I have to say, the Scarlet Snowberry was one of my favorites to design and make and wear. I'm
Mhm.
not a pink person at all. It's not part of my color palette. I pink is just not my thing, but I was gifted that yarn by a friend. There you go.
I love it.
I was gifted and you go, girl. Um, I was gifted a ball of that by Helen of Sunflower Cottage Crochet.
Oh, she's sweet.
And
Yeah.
I thought, well, and I was a guest designer on her website. I thought, well, I have to do something with this yarn
Yeah.
for her guest design. And I had to do something granny square because that's my thing. And when I
Uh-huh.
started working with the yarn, it was just the most gorgeous color, and it felt like
Mm.
a cloud. It was just so much fun to make. And when you
Yeah.
look at it, it pops. I
It
tend to be
does.
a neutral person. And that's another thing I'm trying to do more of is get away from so much neutral stuff. But if I do something neutral like the Highland throw
Yeah.
pillow, it has
That's
something that
gorgeous.
makes it pop.
Yes.
And so the alpine stitch is something I discovered when I was doing that fireside throw crochet
Yeah.
along, and I had a bunch of yarn left over, and I looked at the alpine stitch square and I thought, well, that's it. That's the one I have to do. So that's one of the things I'm trying to incorporate it a little bit more in my designs is if you're going to do neutral, make it pop with something else so that it's
Mhm.
not bland. Because I noticed when I took pictures of my neutral things, there just wasn't anything special
Yeah, you
about
gotta
them, even
gussy up
though
the
I knew there
pictures a
was.
little bit sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm trying to gussy up the designs.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, because I'm a sucker for texture, and I'm thinking that when I look at patterns, one of the first things that I look for is there something fun inside of that that I wanna make? Is there a
Hmm.
stitch that I want to touch every row? And
Yeah.
that is because I shop around and I buy other people's patterns, and just because I design doesn't mean I live within my own little world all the time, because it's exhausting to design everything all the time. Sometimes you just need to look at somebody else's stuff and make it. I just
Yeah.
want this piece of paper
Yeah.
that has all the instructions, and I don't want to have to think that hard about it.
Right.
So, but you've got something on your website that says you're a pattern designer and a pattern writer. What is the distinction between the two?
Well, one thing you haven't mentioned yet is tech editing. As
Oh,
I've
yeah.
tech edited over the years, I've discovered that you can design something and have no idea or little idea or some idea about how to actually write it down.
Yeah.
One of the things that just occurred to me that I'm going to do a little bit more exploration of is that crochet is a foreign language. It really, if you approach it from
It
that
is.
standpoint, you have to learn the words, the syntax, the
Mhm.
grammar,
Yes.
all of that stuff, and that's part of pattern writing. Um,
Mhm.
I hearken it back to, I dealt a lot with foreign languages when I was singing, and,
Mhm.
um, I would encounter students in my studio who maybe grew up speaking Spanish, but they had no idea how to read it or write it, which
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong
Wow.
with that. You can
Yeah.
learn a language without ever having to deal with the written word. But if you're
Mhm.
going to write a pattern, you have to know
Mhm.
all of the elements of because the people who are going to be reading your pattern have to know how to
Yeah.
what you're talking about. Um, and
I just wanna
so
say
as
thank
I've
you. Yes, that is absolutely the truth.
yeah, and as I love helping new designers as they start pattern writing,
Mhm.
getting them in on the ground floor, learning the industry standards and what you can say things 5 different ways, but which one makes the most sense to the person who's going to read it
Yes.
and try to make something from it. Um,
Yes.
and so that's gotten me to thinking about yes, pattern writing is a skill, just like pattern designing is a skill. They're
Mhm.
separate but related. And you have to figure out how to make that make sense. So
That
I'm
is
starting to
absolutely the
think in
truth.
terms of a foreign language.
I love the fact that you're going in that direction, and I'm assuming that that's something that I'm just throwing this out there because you and I chit-chatted, and you said that you were going to be designing a course. Actually, you said that at the beginning of our interview, that you're working on a course. Is this something that's going to be a part of that?
Actually, I have a colleague who's doing a pattern writing course, so I'm not gonna step
Okay,
on her toes. It'll be
sure.
more of a blog series that I can, that's it'll be aimed more at the reader, the
Yeah.
maker. So
Okay.
not necessarily the pattern writers, although
Okay.
that could also no, the course I was talking about, I'm really excited about this one, is how to design your own granny square blanket in 5 or 6 easy steps.
Nice. I love that idea.
So, yeah, and it's going hopefully, it will make its appearance on Granny Square Day, which is in August.
Well, we're
So
definitely going to have all of your social media information linked so that people can, keep it, up with you. And what is the word I'm looking for? Sorry, that's that. I always call it mental brain, but get on your newsletter so that they can keep up with you.
yeah,
Do you do a newsletter? I shouldn't have
I
offered
do a
that without
weekly
asking.
newsletter. I do. I have a weekly newsletter. If you go to my website, madamestitch.com, at the very top, there's a subscribe to the newsletter. And if you go to the home page, you'll
Mhm.
see scroll down the page and there's a place to sign up for the newsletter. And I do things like hot tip of the week. I share a little bit about what's going on in my life. I share events that I'm a part of. I try to do free pattern of the week every week.
Mhm.
I don't always get to the free pattern of the week. Now, sometimes that free pattern is a free PDF download,
Mhm.
or a lot of my patterns are free on the website. So it's free on the website with a discount for the PDF for the weekend for the subscribers
Okay,
only. So
that's
things
great.
like that. Yep.
So we do have a question, not a question, but it's like a statement that would actually help us kind of segue into talking about your tech editing. Sonia says, when I first started, I didn't add the gauge into my patterns. Yes, you can design, but not always know how to make a pattern. So I know that you have got resources and that you are a teacher as well and you
Mhm.
had said that you like to help new pattern designers and stuff like that. So tell us a little bit about tech editing and what does that mean?
It's sort of multifaceted. So one of the things that I look for in a pattern, the first thing I do is just read the whole thing through to get a sense
Mhm,
of, if especially if it's a new client, to get a
mhm,
sense of what their style is. I'll quickly mark things that I see that might need to be checked, or um, that were left out that I feel like need to be done. I check spelling. Um, if you have abbreviations, are all of the abbreviations
mhm,
included in that section, in the stitch key? And are you consistent with how you use the abbreviations? Because if you are inconsistent, then it tends to be confusing for the maker.
mhm,
They may see
mhm,
something one way and then go, "Oh, well, it's written a different way over here.
mhm,
Is that different?" So I look for
mhm,
consistency. Um, if there's a chart, I have Adobe Illustrator, so I do charts for as many of my
mhm.
patterns as I possibly can. So if
Okay.
a designer has a chart, I compare the written instructions to the chart to make sure that they match, because I'm a firm believer that if you have a chart, they need to support each other rather than be separate entities. Yes, some
Absolutely.
of us are
Yes.
visual learners, some of us are audio learners, some of us are written
Mhm,
learners, whatever. And we need to try to speak to as many of those people as we can. But I
mhm,
really believe that the chart and the written instructions need to match each other as closely as possible
mhm,
so there's no confusion. That's my opinion. Other people might say, well, okay, so you can include the chart for those people who don't read instructions well
mhm.
and do it any way you want. But I'm a person who uses both.
I do
So
too.
I want to make so I'll use the chart to check what I'm reading in the
Yes.
instructions all the time.
I was just gonna say that
Um,
exact same thing when I'm learning a new stitch, I literally check the picture to match the
mhm.
the statement.
And especially if you're doing a stitch pattern. So
Mhm.
something that's a multi-row stitch pattern, sometimes looking at the chart
Mhm.
helps clarify what you're reading so that you
Yes.
can actually see what it's supposed to look like and where the stitches go. Um, I noticed that she asked about the gauge. Um, it took me a long time to come to terms with gauge, and I think that's where all of us are. Gauge is that the evil twin sister that we want you know, but
Yeah,
you have to have gauge in things that are fitted. So my
absolutely.
designs don't necessarily have a fitted component, but they do have a size component. So if you want to
Mhm.
get the same size that I have,
Mhm.
you need to get gauge as closely as possible. But gauge
Mhm.
is almost a construct. I crochet differently than you with the
Mhm.
same yarn and the same hook. So
Mhm.
you're actually trying to get gauge that I've created with my own,
Mhm.
and you've got to try to get as close to that
Try to
as
match it, yeah.
possible. And sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
So I will, in a lot of my designs, I will say gauge is not important in this design, but if you want to get this measurement or use this much yarn, this is what you need to get. So
Yeah,
if you're
that's
making a
actually
sweater,
yeah. I was just gonna say that it's as much important for not only the size, but you just said, if they want to use the exact same amount of yarn as you, that's important for them to reach that gauge as well, so that they know exactly how much. I mean, especially if they're spending a lot of money on their yarn.
mhm,
Not
right?
everybody
Yeah.
buys the Hobby Lobby stuff like I do. So,
I dabble in all of it. I love to buy the
absolutely.
Andy Dyer's.
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
I have
he's
some
still my
sitting
beating
right
heart.
here, I'm just dying to touch.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can't do that every time because 30,
No,
40, $50 a hank is not going to sustain the budget, right?
no. No, you must live
But
within your
gauge is
means.
something you have to do. Gauge is
Yes.
something you have to do if you want the pattern to turn out the way the designer has intended.
Mhm.
It's just the way it
So,
goes.
back to tech editing. As someone who I've just begun using tech editing in the last, I wanna say, couple of years, it was a foreign concept to me, quite honestly, that, I would have somebody else outside of myself or maybe my, testers, because in my brain, I thought, "Oh, my testers are looking at my pattern." So tell designers why they need your service, because what does it do for their pattern to have the ability to say this has been tech edited?
Well, we're actually looking at two different things. I try to look at the pattern when I'm tech editing. I try to look at it from the standpoint of the maker, like your testers do, but I can't
Mhm,
because I'm not making it. I can't catch all of the design flaws that might be inherent in it. I can
mhm,
catch some of it, especially if I've got a chart to go by. But I'm really looking at it as a proofreader,
mhm,
a style. There's something called a style sheet. So a style sheet, if you have one, and I don't even have one, but I know what my style is. But it's what font do you use and where do you use it?
oh,
When do you italicize and when do you bold? And um, when do you use brackets and when do you use parentheses and when do you use
mhm,
asterisks? And have you used those consistently in your
mhm,
instructions? How do you write repeats? Do they make sense? For instance, I'll just give you an example of repeats. One of the things that I notice a lot um, is a group of instructions will be repeated. Do you
mhm,
say repeat this many more times? Do you say repeat this many times? Or do you just leave the word repeat out and say
mm,
this many times?
mm.
And so all of that makes a difference because if it may affect the number of times that actual group of instructions was worked. So
Mhm,
you have, I'm looking for those things. Your
yeah,
testers, on the other hand, might catch some of that stuff,
mhm,
but they're looking at it more from the standpoint of user experience. So I didn't quite
mm.
understand how you wrote that line of instruction. Would this make more sense?
Yeah,
Or
I get a lot
um,
of those.
Right? And they're not they may say, "Oh, I just had a terrible time getting your gauge. This is what I got."
Mhm,
So I have to say, "Well, do you crochet as tightly as me?
mhm,
What hook were you using?" Or maybe you have to
mhm.
change that a little bit. So I'm looking at it from a different viewpoint from a tester who is doing user experience. So
Yeah,
if you some of the simpler patterns, you don't need both.
yeah.
I don't have all of my patterns tech edited.
Mhm,
Um,
me either.
or tested. If I feel like it's simple enough and it's
Mhm,
something that I've done before, I can get away without doing those.
mhm,
But the more complicated stuff, especially if you have grading,
mhm.
you need to have a tech editor check that.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it instills also a confidence in the end user that
right.
as a pattern designer, not only did you take the time to make sure that it was tested so the errors are not there anymore, but
Mhm.
also that it is a pleasure to read. That
Yeah,
I'm not going to hit
right.
every single row and be like, "Well, what does that mean? And what was that?" So, I think tech editing is an amazing addition to a pattern writer or designer's, toolbox, you know what I mean? And it's worth every penny
Well,
you
yeah.
spend.
And talking about formatting, not only are the instructions consistent and easy to
Mhm,
understand, but how is it laid out on the page? Is it
mhm.
logical? Do you have things where people know if you reference a photo that helps explain the instructions, is it in a place that you've either referred to it or does it make sense that it's right next to
Mhm,
the text? So formatting, is it easy to read?
mhm.
Is the font easy to read? I'm tech editing some patterns right now that have charts and the charts are too small. So if I print it
Oh,
out, I need a
mhm.
magnifying glass to see the numbers on the rows and
Yeah,
that sort of thing. So those are
and
the
that makes
kinds of
it hard
things
for
that I
the end
point
user.
out.
Yeah,
Exactly, especially if
yeah.
they need reading glasses.
And as a pattern designer, as a pattern writer, pattern designer, however we want to name it, we always need to be thinking about because especially if we want to make this a business, especially if we want people to come back and trust us to buy our patterns again, we have to be thinking about what it's going to the experience they're going to have because really what you
Mhm,
are creating for them is an experience. You want them to
right.
enjoy what you're doing.
And if you want repeat customers, you want
Mhm.
them to be able to rely on, "When I buy this, this is what it's gonna look like." So
Yes.
it's okay to change your formatting a little bit, but are you consistent from pattern to pattern so that people know what they're gonna get?
I have a question for you. Um, do you recommend for people who have been designing patterns for a long time, would you recommend for them to go back to the beginning? Because we all change and adapt and evolve our writing styles over time. Would you recommend for them to update their information to their new writing style?
Yeah, if you have the time, yes, because,
Mhm,
we learn, as you say, we learn things as
mhm,
we go along. We learn what's working and what's not working. I'm actually in the process of doing that right now. So the website that you're seeing right now is a work in progress that
yeah.
looks pretty,
Isn't
but
it
it still
always
has
though?
some things to do, right?
Yeah.
Um, but as I was running an event at the end of February, I was going through a bunch of old blog posts and realized that they're just lacking a lot of stuff.
Mm, yeah.
Um, so I'm scheduling those to go back and freshen them up so that I
Mm,
want people to be able to come and see anything that I do and
mhm,
have it be consistent. If it's
mhm,
okay, I just leave it. But
mhm,
I definitely recommend that you go back and look, especially if it's been 2 to 5 years,
mhm.
because your most recent stuff is probably what reflects your best presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, your work now because we've been growing this whole time. So we want to make sure that we're
Yeah,
representing our best and most authentic self.
yeah, I
Okay,
agree.
so we're actually getting kind of towards the end of the time that we're going to spend together. I would love to open this up. Anybody that has any questions for Debbie, please put them in the chat box. I do have actually a couple of things that have been put in here that we'll just go ahead and reference while we're waiting
Okay.
for people to put questions in. I saw that Sonia, I just want to bring her up again, that I have hundreds of testers over the years, and I've only had a handful that meet my gauge exactly. We all form stitches differently because we hold hooks differently. And so I just, that in reference to what we were just talking about. But Yoki
No, I
has
agree.
asked, are you planning to release any of your patterns in other languages?
It's not really on my radar right now.
Mhm,
And not because I don't think they should be. It's just I've been intensely building my business from the time I joined CBA in 2020 to now, and
mhm.
it's been exponential in the growth. So it's I'm still trying to keep up. Um, but that's something that I think should be done. I just don't have it on my radar right now, and I don't even know where to start. Does
Mhm. Yoki?
um, Yoki, sorry, I'm so sorry, have languages that you think should be translated into?
If I remember correctly, Yoki is from the Netherlands. I could be completely wrong. But I
Ah,
know she's in that area. And so the one problem that I always, because I've had other people ask me the same thing, and I've had people offer the problem. Oh, sorry, she said Belgium. Um,
Belgium.
yeah. So the problem is that finding people that you can trust to translate your patterns, because the trust thing is a big thing in your pattern writing community. You know, are they translating it correctly? I mean, see, because I can't read the language, I don't know if it's being done correctly. So
Right.
I think one of our big roadblocks is finding the people that we can rely upon to do it in the manner
Mhm.
that we would. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I almost feel like the person who's translating it needs to be absolutely has to be a crocheter, but the best
Mhm.
part would be if they are crochet tech editor or pattern writer themselves,
Oh,
so that
that's
they
a good
understand
suggestion.
and like I said, it's
Mhm,
like a foreign language in that there's syntax, there's grammar, there's um, the order of the sentence, noun, verb, not in that sense, but it's like that. There's an
mhm,
order, and I've noticed that things that have been translated from other languages into English don't have the
mhm,
proper order for us to read them, so they're
mm,
confusing, right? So I think the
yeah,
reverse is true. But, I think somewhere down the road, excuse me, I think somewhere down the road, that's absolutely going to be something we all will need to think about is translating into other languages because we're
mm,
a global community. We're not just
right,
US terminology and UK
right.
terminology and
It's
Australia,
expanding so
we are a
much.
global.
Mhm,
Yeah,
and the internet has certainly made the world a very small place all of a sudden, and
exactly,
we're all
exactly.
in the same places together.
Mhm.
Okay, so I do want to have, just as we're waiting for some questions to come in. Okay, so for someone starting out, what would you recommend as a starting point as a new designer or somebody that's intrigued by tech editing and may want to do one or the other?
Tech editing or writing patterns, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
like as a designer, would
Yeah.
you have any kind of personal, say this is where you would start, or what would you recommend as a starting point to somebody who wants to be a designer or is interested by tech editing?
Honestly, I found the most benefit from taking a course.
Mhm,
When I decided to become a tech editor, it was because I had a love of math. So math is my other I
well, God
actually
bless you.
minored in math in college, right? Um, so I thought, well, tech editing is not far from that. I also love to I noticed that I would find grammatical errors in things that I was reading or
Mm, mhm,
misspelling and stuff like that. So I think you have to have a certain um, interest in those
mhm.
areas because it is tedious. It's not something that you want to just go, oh, I think I'll be a tech editor and not have the interest in those things
Yeah,
because
yeah.
but I actually took Jolie has a course, the Tech Editor Hub is where I found it. It's a Facebook group that's free. Anybody can join it.
Okay.
And I took her knitting tech editing course and learned,
Okay.
and because I knew how to knit, I could translate the skills over. They have
Sure.
now, um, they now have a course, crochet tech editing that you can take. I've
Awesome.
not taken it, so I don't know the quality of it, but that's a good place to start.
Okay.
Going to the Craft Yarn Council website and learning the standards for the
Mhm,
abbreviations for how to write repeats, um,
mhm,
knowing that, and reading other people's patterns and seeing
mm,
what they do, because it's not a one size fits all. There are different
mhm,
ways to write the same thing. So when I tech edit, I don't say, oh, it has to be this way or it's not any way at all. It's
mhm,
what is your style and how can I make that better for the maker and for you as
mhm,
well, and how can we can be consistent. So a new designer who thinks they might want to tech edit, get some designing and pattern writing under your belt first,
mhm,
and then
mhm,
if you still are interested in it, take a course, even if that
mhm,
course is it at least it'll give you the basics of what you need to do to be a tech editor and how you can get yourself set up.
mhm. You had said to look at the way other people are writing patterns. I think that kind of if you're a writer, if you're a blogger, if you're, no matter what you do, it's always good to have reference material because you also
Mhm.
have to look at it and say, well, what kind of a pattern do I like to read? That may be the style that you choose to write in because that's where your
Mhm.
brain goes.
Right. Yeah.
So, alrighty. Just one last question. Do you have any tips that you would give to a beginner designer if they are trying to figure out who they are?
Oh gosh. Um, that is a loaded and complicated question. I will tell you what my journey has been. As an experienced crocheter, and I would say probably experienced pattern writer,
Mhm,
when I first started really getting into the pattern writing, I didn't know what I was doing, even though I knew
mhm,
exactly what I was saying as a crocheter. Um, Practice makes perfect, and I say this, and it's perfect is relative. Perfect is a
mhm.
moving target.
Yes.
Practice, 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 and get other eyes on it. So
Mhm.
I've always been of the ilk that if I want to do something, I'm going to try it.
Yep.
Don't let doubt or fear hold you back. Do it, do it,
Mhm.
do it. But
Yes.
do it with an informed place, so that and
That's good.
have people on your side. Like I have,
Mhm.
oh, I don't know if you saw it, but on the crochet technical editing part of my website, I have a series of articles that take you through some of the things that you should do as a pattern designer that will help you
Oh,
save
that's a great
money
reference.
on a tech editor. Um,
Mhm.
so that there's that, but I don't be afraid to start. Do
Mhm.
it, but then don't be afraid to take criticism in a friendly way,
Mhm.
be able to adapt, be able to learn, because as you
Mhm.
said before, we're constantly learning. And that's,
Mhm.
I think, one of the best things about this business is I'm constantly learning new things.
Yeah.
It's never dull. Even though I go back to my granny square is never dull because there's always
No.
something different about it. And I'm always learning
Mhm.
something new about it. So don't be afraid, do.
Mhm. Well, and then once you understand the stitches that you wanna use, it's all about playing with it after that. It's all about,
Mhm.
"Okay, so I think I can do this, can I make it happen?" If you're an
Right.
intrepid, if you wanna get in there and tackle things, if you've got that kind of a personality, I absolutely would recommend people to just do it. Just dive in.
And I think you have to experiment to find your avatar, your ideal customer. You
Mhm.
may know out of the gate who that person is, but I thought I knew. And I did to a certain extent, but then I figured out as I started to get feedback from my subscribers, people
Mhm.
who would email me, and or comment in my Facebook group, I started to realize the people who are paying attention to me and the things that they
Mhm.
loved about what I did, and that's when I started to see, okay, that's where my niche really should be. So I
Mhm.
think you can start with a niche in mind, but be willing to have that shift as you get
Mhm.
feedback and you start to
It's that,
figure out where your interests
yeah,
really do lie.
it's that
Because
constant
let's face it,
evolution as a designer.
it's a constant evolution. And even though I'm niching down to granny stitch, that may
Mhm.
evolve into something else
Yeah.
somewhere down the road. Who knows?
Well, and who knows what you're gonna feel like doing next year. You know, you may have granny squared yourself out in 2023, and it's gonna be a whole new stitch in 2024. Who knows?
Mm, I'm sorry.
That's
No,
not on the plans, huh?
never, never.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's exciting that you've got something that you're working towards. Let us know where we can find you once we're done with our, like once we move on with our day. Where can we find you? On Facebook? Are you there? Are you on Instagram? Are you? And I know you have the website.
Yep, I'm in all the places.
Mhm.
I'm Madam Stitch, and it's with an E,
Mhm.
all one word. So I'm Madam Stitch on Instagram, Madam Stitch on Pinterest.
Mhm.
Um, um, Madam Stitch Crochet is my Facebook page
Mhm.
and on YouTube. So if it Madam Stitch doesn't come up as me, you might have to add the word crochet, but I'm on
Okay.
YouTube. Um, yeah, TikTok, Madam Stitch.
I did want to ask you, how did you come up with your name?
Oh gosh. So I like I said, I was a professional performer.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, I happened to be doing massage therapy because I was experiencing some tension in my
Uh-huh.
singing. And so I was on the table one day and just started talking to my massage therapist about this crochet business and struggling with a name. And we tossed out a few things. And diva was one of them. You know, we had to do something that gave homage to my
Yeah.
former or
Yeah.
whatever was my previous profession. And she came up with Madam Stitch, and
Really?
immediately my brain went, yeah." So it's
Uh-huh.
actually an homage to my previous career, which was it was a 45-year career,
Wow.
um, and
Fabulous.
so I'm the diva of stitching, and I don't feel like I'm a princess or anything, so don't get that idea, but it's an homage to my professional singing.
Yoki is asking, do you sing while
Is that
crocheting?
crazy? No. No, I do not. No, my singing days are over, I'm sorry to say.
Do you, and I know our interview is going a little bit longer than I normally do, but there's just so much to pick from your brain. Um, but do you, I mean, you said that you watch TV. Do you have a specific thing that you like to watch? Do you listen to anything in particular?
Oh gosh, you're gonna think I'm absolutely weird. Well,
Probably not.
crime procedurals, I love those.
Oh,
I love
you and I can
Stranger
hang out in the
Things.
afternoon.
I love Stranger Things and everything horror,
Yes.
except I don't go Freddy Krueger on you, I won't go that far.
Okay.
Um,
I go with
I
that.
I
I mean,
love baking shows,
yes.
but mostly British.
Yes.
Um, and that I don't love reality shows, so I don't watch those. But it's mainly crime procedurals and horror. It's
Girl,
weird.
I mean, you don't
It
even
drives
have
my
to
husband
explain it to me.
crazy.
That's where I live.
Good,
It's so crazy.
good.
It's like my murder shows. I call them my murder shows. And because my husband's like, I'm a little bit afraid that you watch so much of this. He's like, it's almost like you're taking lessons and trying to figure out how to get rid of me. Never in a million years. He does too much for me. But yeah, no,
Right,
I find it intriguing. It makes it makes my brain think, and I don't necessarily have to watch
yep,
it to know what's going on.
right, and I love Mandalorian and everything Star Wars, just love it.
Oh my God, yes. Like we're twins. Holy cow.
So are we spirit animals or something? I don't know, sisters from
Absolutely.
twin
Like
sisters from
virtual fist
another
bump
I don't know.
here. But no, I mean I just that's my world. Holy cow.
I
It's
love
so
it.
funny how you
I love
find
it.
people who are so much the same.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I will say that I do watch some reality TV. We call it trash reality TV because my husband's into it for some reason. But it's not the lovey ones, it's the competition kind of stuff like, and Sonia Blackstone is on here. She's my oh my gosh, The Challenge. It used to be an
Oh,
MTV show, and I guess it still is, but it's like trash reality mixed with sports. So that's where my husband hangs out.
oh my
And
gosh.
so
Murder with a
we're
hook,
kind
I
of
love
addicted
it.
to that.
Yoki says murder with a hook, I love it. It's great.
Yes. Yes, and we've got several people on here who are loving the baking shows. I love baking shows,
Oh,
and I used to be a
yeah,
complete Food Network junkie, just an absolute junkie. And apparently you have a twin
that's
sister in the Virgin
funny.
Islands as well.
You know what? Maybe we should just have an interview every week and just
There
talk
you go.
shows.
There you go. That would be fantastic.
Stitch and watch, I guess.
Absolutely. We'll talk about this after. We'll get it
Fabulous.
arranged so we can
Fab.
talk about our shows.
I like it. We
All
have
right.
all these Stitch and Bitch um,
Yes.
groups. We should have a
Uh-huh.
Stitch and watch, and we all watch the
Absolutely.
same show and then come in and
That
talk.
would be
Did
fun.
you see what she did? What was that?
Yes. I think that's an absolutely great idea because if you can have a book club, you can have a TV club.
Why not?
Do you listen to podcasts? I've been trying to, but it just bores me.
You know, I it's funny you should say that. I 2 days a week, I take my older grandson to swim practice, and on the way home, it's about a 15-20 minute drive, and I
Mhm,
just started what is her name? Faith Hannah, does, a blogging SEO 15-minute podcast. Ay,
mhm,
ay, ay. And I listened to the first one on Thursday, and I fell in love. And
mhm,
I don't take the time to listen to anything during the day because 'cause I'm always doing something that requires my
mhm,
attention. But I
mhm,
did that, and I thought, "I have to do more of that because
mhm.
it's just so informative."
I was trying to listen to a podcast on, um, I think it was Spotify. It was just going too long. It's like it was an
Yeah.
interesting-esque story, but it wasn't really capturing me, and then I tried to listen to another one of the same ones, and it just I don't know if it's the voices were just really sleepy, they weren't excited. The one that I found that I love on YouTube is, Mystery, Makeup, and Mayhem or something like that, Monday, and for the life of me, Bailey Sarian, I believe is her name. So she does her makeup while she tells you about some real life murder that happened or about a murderer.
My
It
gosh,
just sucks me right in.
it's hilarious.
It is,
It's
and she's
hilarious.
so funny. So I think if you
Yeah.
have a fun hook like that, and you're a funny person, or you have like a little bit more of a personality, and I know that that may sound kind of judgmental, but if you're a very chill toned person, I have a hard time listening.
Yeah, I don't think you're making a judgment. I think it's a skill, you know, to be able to hook people in.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
I just don't
Storytelling is an
normally, I
art.
don't have the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. They're in
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
our stitch and watch.
Yeah, they
I
wanna
love it.
join in.
Let's do
So
it.
maybe we'll do like a Zoom or something. That way we can have everybody show up and we can talk about our show.
I like it. I like it.
I think it'd be fun. Alrighty, well, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna say goodbye for now. We will have another chit chat on another time, and
Oh my gosh, that'd be so much fun.
that would be so much fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm so glad that I've met you. And but So we're going to say goodbye to Debbie from Madam Stitch today. And thank you so much for joining me on the Buzz with Busy Crochet. And we're
And
going to
thanks for
go
having
ahead.
me.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and remove her from this so I can say bye-bye to everybody. All righty, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the Buzz with Busy Crochet today. Thank you for being here, for participating. Thank you for all the comments and the questions that you placed in the chat box. And I'm gonna say it toodaloo for now, and we will see you with the next interview.